Once upon a midnight day, while I pondered weak and weary over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded nearly napping, suddenly there came a tapping, as of someone gently rapping at my chamber door. "'Tis some visitor," I muttered, tapping at my chamber door, "only this and nothing more." Ah, distinctly I remembered it was in the bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow, vainly I had sought to borrow from my books surcease of sorrow, sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden, whom the angels named Lenore, nameless here forevermore. Edgar Allan Poe's The Raven is only one of the many pieces of literature left behind by one of America's greatest authors. He was born in 1809 and tragically lost both of his parents shortly before his third birthday. He was taken in by a merchant named John Allen. Young Poe grew up in England and Virginia, and later enlisted in the U.S. Army and even attended West Point. When debt became an issue for him, he began to publish his work in forms of poetry, short stories, and critiques, each demonstrating a well-rounded author. Poe published his first volume of poetry in 1826 in order to pay off debt he accrued in college. Who knew that his very first volume would be so rare and worth $200,000 today? He published a few more volumes while enlisted in the Army, as well as while he was attending West Point. The most famous of his poems were The Raven, Annabel Lee, and The Bells. Each poem demonstrated his extraordinary skill in musicality and of verse or dramatic dark views. Not only was Poe a gifted poet, he was also a short story writer. He began publishing his short stories after winning $50 from the Baltimore Saturday Courier when he submitted MS Found in a Bottle. In fact, 5 of his short stories were published in this Courier. His most popular of his short stories are The Fall of the House of Usher, The Telltale Heart, and The Pit and the Pendulum. Although Poe was not the inventor of Gothic stories, he surpassed authors such as Beckford and Mrs. Radcliffe, and contended with Washington Irving, who is famous for the legendary Sleepy Hollow. Poe's style differed in that he didn't incorporate lightness or humor into his stories like Irving did. He kept them dark and twisted and didn't change them even when they weren't popular. The average reader knows that Poe was a poet and a short story writer. What they often don't know is that he was also a critic. He was a well-respected critic, and even compared to legendary critics in England. Poe was excellent at critiquing by being forceful and very knowledgeable. He was definitely not shy to share his personal opinion, and it is believed that he left his critique work due to losing his wife Virginia Clem in 1847 and gave in to his alcoholism. America lost one of the greatest Gothic authors of all time in 1849. Specific details are still a mystery as to what happened to Poe. All we know is that after visiting Virginia, Poe was found unconscious in Baltimore and taken to a hospital where he took his last breath. Mystery lovers will always be ever so grateful to Edgar Allan Poe and his contribution of poetry, short stories, and critiques. Thank you, and I hope you guys had a happy Halloween.